Good evening, everyone. We are back, familiar faces. This time we're over on the Rotor Pros channel, Chris Durrell, and with me is Dane Cheneau. But this time we are talking PGA. We got the DFS PGA live show. We're going to be doing this every Wednesday night going forward. PGA is finally back. We got the Charles Schwab Challenge. How excited are you?
Pumped. Finally get some PGA golf back. I know we've had Outlaw and then dabbling every week in that, but it's nice to actually have the top players in the world all in one event and
Full field
ready to
event.
get back going. Yeah, yeah, 150 guys about. So
And a full tournament event, contest for DraftKings finally. And I do like the showdown, had some success with it with Outlaw, but I'm definitely ready for this full field.
yeah, got a millie maker. Tons of big contests. They might be full. I reserved last night. I think they could have even made them bigger. I don't play in the millie maker very much. I might throw a couple lines in just to have a lottery ticket in there. But this couldn't be a better week for a millie maker if somebody is max entering it or something. Fade the chalk and because nobody knows what's coming.
Yeah, I don't think, we talk about this with every sport coming back now that no professional player has ever gone this long without being in, competition with another team. I'm sure they're all training and swinging and they've got, simulators and even driving ranges that they can go to, but it's not competing against other professionals in, on an actual professional setup course type thing. So you're exactly right that there is a lot more variance here. It's kind of like this NASCAR race going on with the brand new setup for short tracks and no practice. And just to sum it up, if you're not watching the race, it's been insane to start. A little frustrating. Probably going to tune out here for a little bit and maybe show up back in after the show, possibly even into stage 3. But yeah, a lot of variance in the golf right now. So I guess my question for you with that, how are you setting up your model in terms of, like, say, course history, current form, and stats? Like, what percentage are you kind of putting on each?
Yeah, let me pull that up. Let's see. So I'm obviously I took out recent form. I didn't take it out. I dropped it down to about 10%. That's usually something I'm looking at 35% of my model is recent form. Um, but I've dropped that down. I'm looking at just a mix of shorter term stats like 24, 50, and extended out to the longer 50 and 100 round stats. So course history, I'm looking at about 20%, recent form 10, and then the rest of it's just stats, seeing who fits what I'm looking for over the long term, just as a golfer. So um, trying to take out as much of the recent form because we don't have that, honestly. And you can spin any kind of narrative you want this week, I think. So um, I, I don't want to try to do that. I just want to see what guy fits this place.
Yeah, I'm with you on form. I've taken form down to, I think right now, I've got 10% on DraftKings points the last 5 events before the break, and then only 5% on, like, average finish. So only really 15%. I'm usually running upwards of 40% to 45% some weeks on form. So I'm down quite a bit there. I'm looking at stats, about 50% of my model, looking at some course history is the big debate that everyone has, whether it means something. I mean, to me, I'm not heavy on course history versus form. This week, I'm a little more course history versus form, obviously, just because we have that data. It seems a little more reliable, although some say it's too small sample size in terms of course history. But when players have their choice, most of the players, let's say, have their choice of where they want to play, it really tells me something about course history, about the narrative. But like you said, you can spin really any narrative you want. But I'm definitely looking at course history. Where I'm deciding 1v1 versus a player, that course history might come into effect. Like, for instance,
Yeah.
let's talk, Xander Schauffele versus maybe Brooks Koepka or Dustin Johnson right around him. Well, Schauffele's had, like, no success here, while Brooks and DJ have only played once. They've both had pretty good finishes. So it's really up for debate, really, how you go about that. But definitely stats is number one for me. And, getting into the course here, it's a par 70, so it's a very interesting course, the very first one coming back, because I think a lot of these players weren't normally signed up to maybe this event, like Rory, Justin Thomas never played here. DJ hasn't played here since 2014. You got Morikawa, who's new. I mean, Gary Woodland hasn't played here since 2012. I'm just looking at the top guys. Shane Lowry, Jason Day hasn't played here since 2011. So a lot of these big names wouldn't normally be here if it wasn't the return. How much of that are you looking at this week?
Yeah, that kind of ties into the course history. Maybe it's been and you've probably heard it around the industry a lot this week, that it's a lot stronger field than normal. So
yeah,
I'm not going to discount people's recent history here, because they've still played well, and they would have played well regardless of who was in the field, I guess.
Yep.
But it's not something I'm going to not play Rory or JT
No,
or
not at
something
all.
just because they haven't played here. So, and before we dive into the course, the last thing with my model, it's just I'm using it kind of as a baseline this week. It's definitely not an end all be all. I'm looking a lot less at my model overall this week and kind of just playing some gut feels and
Yep.
trying to base that on ownership as we've got some updated numbers tonight.
For sure. So with this course being a par 70, I think we do see, less than driver off the tee, some 3-wood, some driving irons, especially from those big guys. I kind of looked at the last 2 years, guys that averaged over 300 yards off the tee at this event. There is no more than 4. There was 30 players and I think 42 players in the last 2 years that averaged over 300 yards. There's been no more than 4 of those players who finished top 10. I mean, 2 years ago they finished 1, 2. I think it was Rose and Kopka were 1, 2 in distance, and they were 1, 2 in the field. But generally, you don't need a lot of distance here. It's more about placement. The greens are smaller than average. We're right around 5,000 square feet per green complex. So to me, this week, number one in my model that I'm looking at is approach shots. I think that's going to be huge. And then it's a pretty large sample size. I believe it's the last 5 years. Looking at Fantasy National in terms of all the approach shots distances, and 27% of all approach shots have come from that 150 to 175. So not only am I looking at approach, but I'm looking at that proximity range from 150 to 175. Par 4 scoring, obviously, because there's 12 of them on this course. A little bit of bogey avoidance, but even on the tough years when the wind gets up here, we have seen scores in the -12 to -15. So it's a little more birdie or better percentage for me. Especially, I've made a showdown sheet for this week as well for round 1. I'll be updating it throughout the week. That model is a little bit different. It's a lot more heavy on birdie or better, less on bogey avoidance. Just because that's just the nature of showdown, is we're looking for birdies and scoring. So that's kind of the way I got my stats model set up. Anything else you're looking at that I maybe missed there?
I'm looking at a lot of the same things. I had just fairways gained in there to get some of that accuracy off the tee and things like that. It's bent grass greens. You can look at your putting splits part of your sheet to help and just see who putts well on this. Use that as a tiebreaker as well. Just another thing to look at.
And being that you brought that up, I'll just go over a few guys that do stand out. And on my sheet, it is new since the break. I've been putting together a database of kind of your strokes gained putting splits between Bermuda, bent grass, and POA. So what I've done is gone back. Right now, I've gone back as far as May last year. I forget what event it was, but it's been about a year of data. Some guys have smaller samples than others, but the top 5 in terms of strokes gained per round on bent grass greens, Kevin Na is right at the top, 16 rounds. So it's about 4 events, give or take, whether he's missed the cut on any. I would not assume he has just by looking at those numbers. Jordan Spieth is second on bent grass, 1.62 per round, and then it drops off to Kevin Kistner at 1.23, Andrew Putnam at 1.12, Lanto Griffin 107, and then just outside of that is Brandt Snedeker at 1.03 strokes per round on bent grass. Those are the only 6 players in the field in that time span, in that sample size, that have gained over a stroke per round. It's not a be-all, end-all with me. It's just one of the things that I am looking at, maybe a decision breaker between player A and player B type thing.
Yep, I agree.
For sure. And then something else I do try and compare is, okay, say a player like, for instance, Brandt Snedeker. He is really good on bent grass and POA, but then he's terrible on Bermuda. So I'm just kind of looking for guys that maybe get a big boost when they come to that bent grass. just another way, another thing that I put into my model. I never just look at one thing, but it's one thing I do look at, and it's nice to have that data on there now. It will be integrated into the actual weighted model, probably for next week's event, and it will change obviously every week going forward as well. So you can kind of, one thing I will be looking at, not so much this week because I don't have it side by side yet, but when I get it into the sheet, one thing I really want to look at is strokes gained putting overall versus strokes gained putting per round on a certain kind of grass type. That's really where I'm going with this, just to see if a player is going to get an advantage to a certain grass type. But going into the top tier, so just for our picks, now that we've kind of gone over our model a little bit, we've talked about the course, let's just rattle off a few players in each price range that really stand out to you, whether it be a cash play, someone that you think, maybe one player in the top upper tier that you would consider using in all formats, and then one player that you'd pivot off of, and then I'll go second.
Okay. Up in the 10K range, it's going to be Rory for me if I go up there. I know it's kind of tough to get him in with some of the value dropping down in the 6K range this week, but I think it's doable. I've played around with some lineups and things. Never know where any of these guys are at, and all of them are potentially good plays. I don't see a big discrepancy in ownership. And I think Rahm, if he is projected right now to be the highest owned out of this range, which is kind of interesting to me. But if I'm going up here to Rory, staying in that 9K range, and I think one of my favorite GPP plays of the week, and you might crap all over this, is Brooks Koepka at 9,700. Second here a couple years ago, he was playing awful early this year, and it was kind of, I listened to his press conference today, and it was about he was coming off that knee surgery that I completely forgot about. So maybe, and he said it was kind of a blessing in disguise for him to have this extra time to get ready. And he says he feels a lot better. You never know exactly what that means, but his game has had a little bit more time to recover. So I'm fine taking a shot on him if he's going to be around 10% on. I know it's not a major, so it's not exactly the time where
feels
we're
like a
going
major
after Brooks, but yeah, it does kind of feel like one. So maybe he's engaged this week, and we'll see. But I like Brooks in that range.
And I mean, taking a player that's going to be like on Fanshare Sports, I think they've got him. He's got 44 tags, but that projected ownership's right around that 10 to 12% range. Only, I think it's like an 85% sentiment rate in there. So, a lot of people thinking about fading him because it's not a major, because of the surgery, because of the layoff. I think the layoff for a player like that is probably going to help. Now, the other, I've got a question. I'm not going to crap all over that play. I mean, it's not a cash play for me, but if you're getting a player with the same upside as these other guys in the exact same price range, but half the ownership, you're halfway there already. I mean, that's a great pivot if you can get a guy that price with that kind of upside. A guy that I like as a pivot in that upper range is Justin Thomas. I don't think he might be a little bit higher owned than Koepka, but if you're not going with, I think, Rory or Rahm, I think Thomas is the next best guy to drop down to in terms of GPP. For cash games, for me, I'm kind of going, let's just say the upper range is 85 and up. Cash games, I'm looking heavily at Tony Finau and Kuchar at their prices, especially Kuchar. He's got excellent course history here. He was trending really good before the break. He's just been solid, making cuts consistently pretty much his whole entire career. So mid 85 or mid 8K range, I'm definitely on board. Tony Finau, number one in my model. He had solid course history 2015 to 2017, and then he put up a T2 last year. He had some not great form coming in, so maybe the break helps him. I'm just kind of going for cash games, more of a balanced lineup. Another guy, Mark Leishman, stands out there a little bit as well. Hasn't played here in a couple of years, but was kind of in that T15 to T30 range, and I'll take that at 8,900 if he makes some birdies for us. And he's shown some upside as well this year and has been very solid as well. So those are three guys I'm looking at kind of in that mid-range as solid plays, like pivoting to Thomas off of Rahm and McIlroy at the top, and even Ricky Fowler in there as well a little bit. I think he might come a little bit lower on in that 10% range. And my question for you in this upper tier is, what are your thoughts on DJ? The price is ridiculous. I mean, he's an ex number one player in the world. We know his upside is right pretty close to Rory's, but he's only 9,500. He had that knee surgery last September, played pretty terribly early on this spring. Are you ready to get back on board with DJ at that price?
If I was playing the 20 max, I don't think I am this week. I think I'm playing 3 or 4 lineups in single entries. If I was playing the 20 max, I would in a few lineups, but I don't think I'm there. Obviously, we all watched him at their match down in Florida, and he looked god awful. He's another guy. I listened to his interview today just to see if he had any talk about if he had prepared a lot since then. And he said the first 6 weeks he didn't do anything, didn't touch a club, and then he's said he's tried to prepare as much as possible, in his words, to get back. But I think I'm off even. But that low ownership and lower price is a perfect example of a millie maker or a multi-entry guy.
If he's going to be 8 to 10% owned, while these other guys, that's a millie maker pick right there. Watch him come out and shoot like a 64. 65 or 63, 64 on day one, and everyone will be on him all of a sudden round two. It's a weird week that way because we do have a loaded top of the field, and then we got these guys like Jason Day is 8,300. That'll just transition right down into that mid range. No way in hell I'm touching Jason Day. Arnold Palmer Invitational, he backed out. I believe that was a back. He was injured back in round one before he was done round one there at the Arnold Palmer Invitational. He's pretty much questionable, like the moment he wakes up in the morning until he goes to bed at night. Probably even questionable during the night. So he's not a player for me. But 2 players, I mean, coming down, you're probably going to agree with me in terms of mega chalk in this. Let's go mid 7K up to that Kutcher. Kevin Na and Harris English, your thoughts on them being mega chalk? And are you going to be on their chalk?
I'm off of Na. I just never liked to play him. I think Harris will be chalk in the types of contests I'm playing in. I think I'll probably have him in maybe 1 or maybe even 2 lineups out of the 4. I like the way he was playing early this year. He played great in the fall. Obviously, we have no idea what he's done in the last few months. So, I mean, it's just a complete guess. But if he is going to be mega chalk, maybe I go underweight or fade. But I do like the play and his history here.
Makes a lot of sense. Right now, my model has him 5th while Na is 31st. I definitely lean English because of the ball striking. He's 18th in ball striking versus Na is 102nd, and that has a lot to do with his off the tee. A lot to do with the distance, but neither are really that accurate. They're about 50 to 60th in the field in accuracy, but the good drive percentage is what gets me from Harris English. So when he misses the fairway, he's hitting a lot more greens in regulation than Na, and I believe going back and looking at the average player stats for the last 5 years, we're right around 55% driving accuracy, so I definitely lean English a little bit in that scenario. I don't think he's going to be like to the point where let's see here. Projections only sitting around on a couple places around 12 to 15%. Like, that's not mega chalk to me in the mid 7K range. I'm willing to deal with that for sure. If it was 20 plus for a guy in the mid 7K, the variance like this coming back, I'd probably try and find some pivots, but I think I'm totally okay with that.
Yeah, I am too. Couple guys I want to get your thoughts on. I like Joel Dahlman. We actually did see him play on the Outlaw Tour, and he obviously the week prior to that he was playing kind of out with his friends, I guess, and shot a sub 60 round. I'm not putting much into that, obviously, but he's 7,500, and I don't think he's going to be mega popular. He does have a 20th here a couple years ago. So I like him. And then on the top side of that range, we're talking about Scotty Scheffler. He looks like he's going to be just chalk, and I'm not there. He's a fade for me. I know we're in Texas, and he's a Texas guy, and he's been playing pretty well to start the year. He was, and and we've seen him. I think he played in some event with him, and that him and Hovland were both in during this break, and I think he won it or finished second, something. But 8,400, and if he's going to be mega chalk in there, I'm definitely not there.
Yeah, if he's chalk, I'm not on board with that either. When it comes to Dahmen, though, or Damon, or however you want to say his name, I'm on board there.
True.
I think that is a good pivot off non-English in the exact same price range, and it makes a lot of sense. He sits 13th in strokes gained approach, 10th in ball striking, and then I'm just kind of looking at his last few events before the break here, just in the 2020 portion of the season. He's made all 5 cuts with back-to-back top fives up to with the Genesis and the Arnold Palmer. He's also gained strokes on the approach shot in 5 of his last 6, and off the tee in each of those 6 as well. And then his around the green game has been above average. The putting is always a little bit shaky with him, but he was trending higher in terms of putting. He had some really good putting rounds at the Sony as well as the Genesis, gaining 3.8 and 5 strokes. So if he's going to be sub 10%, I think that's a great pivot there as well. Like you said, he's got a little bit of course history here as well. And like you said, with the variance, making these little pivots and gaining maybe 5 to 10% in ownership, you can still get 2 or 3 chalky guys, but making that little pivot maybe in the mid-range to the lower range makes a lot of sense. One guy I wanted to ask you on, who's a part of my core right now in this range as well, is Billy Horschel. I think takes up a lot of ownership for good reasons. I mean, he's not projected that high, and that's kind of the nice thing. We talked about this on the NASCAR show with the value guys, is there's so many of them that there isn't really one guy that stands out as being, 20% owned or the mega chalk. A lot of these guys in this range for golf this week are going to be 8 to 12%, give or take 1 or 2% for all of them. So it's really just kind of take your pick. I don't think one is overwhelming chalk. Maybe Nah, just because of his last 2 years here at this event. But Horschel, I mean, he stands out to me. He is 19th, 34th in his 2 trips here. He had good form, top 10s in 2 of his last 4 before the break after a little bit of a bad stretch before that. He's got 4 top 10s this season. I think he's got the upside, probably top 20 upside, which I'll take at 7,400.
Yeah, I think to me that's more of a cash play. I don't see the upside there completely for a GPP, I think. Maybe I'm just completely off and I'm fading too much chalk. I don't know. But as for just in a GPP sense, I'd probably rather have a guy like Damon or even Max Homa in GPP, somewhere in that range.
Are you going to have any homeboy Ryan Palmer? Going to get him in there? There's your chalk in this range.
Yeah,
just
yeah.
Narrative based.
Great history here from here. I don't know. It's going to be interesting to see where I land. Obviously, I'm going to play some of these guys that are going to be chalk. I'm not going to fade all the chalk just because they're going to be 15 to 20% on. I mean, but I'm not going to be all in on him just because I think he lives here either and has good history here, because like I keep saying, we have no idea where these guys' games are at. Another guy that's a homeboy, I guess, and has great history here. What are you doing with Jordan Spieth?
0%.
Okay.
0. I've always been a Jordan Spieth fan too. Really loved that run that he went on a while back, but he's just been terrible. There's no other way to put it. His putting and his around the green game have been really good. That's pretty much what's saved him. But outside of those 2 top 10s this year, 8th and 9th, everything else is outside the top 40. You got miscut in there, and you got T55s, T43s. I mean, the price is right. He definitely has the upside. He's shown it here. I think he's going to be high owned because of the course history. He is a name value versus other guys in this range to your normal fans, especially when you got millie makers and they're trying to bring. There's going to be a lot of public people that maybe aren't super golf fans. They're going to recognize Jordan Spieth's name. He's won 4 majors, 3.
3.
3. 3 majors. Like Hovland, Berger, Kistner, Fitzpatrick, Scheffler. Your normal golf fan, your average golf fan maybe hasn't heard of those guys as much, so I'm fading that chalk You? Are you getting any?
Oh man, I don't know. I mean, part of me at the beginning of the week when I saw the price, and I was like, this guy just makes a bunch of birdies. Obviously, he's going to make tons of bogeys, but he is 8,000. He's a guy that's going to outscore probably where he finishes if he can make the cut. I guess. I hate where his game has been. Um, and then, I mean, he's a guy, I guess, at low ownership, I wanted to take a shot on him. But if he's going to be chalk, I don't see myself doing that. If he's chalk, I don't see getting to Jordan Spieth, a guy that's that volatile. Um, if he was low ownership, I would take the chance that maybe his game's improved since the break, but not 15,
Yeah, I need to
20%
see. I need to
ownership.
see some first. I'd rather be
Yeah.
one late than one early this week. This time around, anyway. I mean, he's fourth in tags and sitting around
Right.
90% sentiment rating. So I would imagine he's going to be chalk in this range, around that 8K. But like I said, a lot of them are going to be spread out. But he's one of those higher owned guys in that range. Maybe he won't be 20%. Maybe you're only around 15, 13, 15, something like that. But I will fade that in that range. Maybe go with your boy Hovland there in that range. He looks like he's
Oh
going to
my
be
God.
maybe half the ownership. But kind of going down a little bit further to try and get some of these stars and scrub lineups, which is probably a way I'm going quite a bit in, at least in my 20 maxes. I'm going to be looking at Russell Knox. I think a lot of people are going to be looking at those four terrible starts. Not terrible. He missed the cut by not a whole bunch, maybe a stroke or two in those last four events after like putting up top 25 after top 25 all season earlier this year. Excellent course history, top 25 in all four trips here, 7,200. I'm definitely in on him. A guy that I think is going to be super low owned for GPPs is going to be Christian. Let's go with Bazudenhout. That's what we're going to call him tonight. He doesn't got a lot of sample size in terms. He's from the Euro Tour. Not a lot of sample size playing over here on the PGA Tour, but what I like is that he's been here three times in this season, all elite fields: the WGC HSBC, T17, that was in November, February at the WGC Mexico Championship, T29, and then at the Arnold Palmer right before the break, that was in early March, he was T18. So he's putting up top 20 finishes, top 30 finishes in these elite fields with elite players. He's going to be super low owned, in my opinion. Not super low owned as in like maybe 4 to 6% somewhere in there. Because I mean, Fanshare's got him even lower. He's only got there for 8 tags so far for like sub 5% ownership. So I definitely like seeing that kind of success in these kind of fields. Any thoughts on him or maybe some other guys in this low seven range?
Uh, I don't know a lot about him. Kind of the first thing that pops to mind is that he's a bomber, which wouldn't typically fit the course. But I have not watched him play or kept up with him very much recently, and he did have some good finishes before uh, the break. So definitely for GPPs, I could see taking some shots on him. A couple other guys down here. Tom Hoge is kind of. I like Knox with you. First of all, he's my favorite down here in this low range. Hoge, he's popping for me in a lot of stats, and he probably is for everybody.
Mm-hmm.
He had a nice start early in the year. Um, Fell off for a couple tournaments, but I think he has been here the last 3 out of the last 4 years and made the cut every year. Danny Lee has a pretty good history here. Wasn't playing very bad. Playing pretty good actually before the break. So I could see taking some shots on here, but this is a lot of the range where you get and you just need to mix and match. You don't need to zone in. If you're playing 5 lineups, don't play any of these guys in all 5 lineups. Um,
Right,
this
exactly.
is they're not the best players in the field. They're coming off of this long break. Nobody knows what's coming. Um, you just got to take some shots on some narratives that you think this week, whether that's they were playing well, or they've been here in the past, or both, or whatever it may be.
Yep. I agree with you. Then that's a really good rule when we're talking about these guys in these mid ranges of any sport. They're in the mid range to the value range of pricing for a reason. They're not consistent. So when you're building GPP lineups, you definitely want to get a group of value guys that you can mix and match and really reduce the exposure. Because if you go and put 50%, even 50% exposure to some of these lower end guys, if you're running 20 lineups, having 10 lineups with Russell Knox or Bezuidenhout or Billy Horschel or even Harris English or anyone like that in these low ranges, just to me is a mistake. I'd rather be overexposed to the guys at the top, like the elite players. This week maybe a little bit different just because coming back from the break, but still, yeah, like you said, if you're building 5 lineups, you're only going to want maybe these value guys in 2 of those 5, unless you're feeling really risky and you want to build a core of, say, 4 players and then just kind of pivot those other 2 players in those 5 lineups. It really depends on how you go about it, but generally I'm not going 100% on anyone. I'm rarely going 70% on any one golfer, or same as NASCAR. There's just so much variance in there that I don't want to be overexposed to one single person that can ruin my whole day or weekend in terms of golf.
Who's winning now? Michael McDowell? I mean,
I honestly don't have it on because I just seen in chat that Truex has gone down pit road to fix right front damage. So, yeah, not turning this back on.
I didn't miss anything. So, all right.
Go Kyle Busch. That's all I care now.
Logano looks like he's still leading for anyone keeping up. So okay.
Another thing with Stars and Scrubs that works this week is the punt range. I don't normally go in the sub 7K range, almost never with PG. I don't really find I have to. I play a lot of cash. Would you ever consider Steve Stricker being a punt cash play if you wanted to go Stars and Scrubs? I mean, he makes cuts. He's got experience here. He's 6,200. Another guy that I'm going to bring up to you, not a cash play. I'm going to give you 3 guys, and I want you to kind of give me your feelings on all 3 real quick. So Steve Stricker's one. He's one I would consider in cash. I'm not going to run him in cash personally, but I think if you're going Superstars and Scrubs, you want to get Rory in there. I definitely don't mind that at 6,200. It feels like with his course history and some of his, let's just say, consistency in terms of making the cut at his price with his putting and his strokes gain around the green, which kind of comes into play a little bit with these smaller greens, I would consider him for cash if you're playing
Rory on that one.
Okay,
if you're going up to Rory, yeah, for sure.
Exactly. I'm more on board with a balance play, but if you're got it in your head that you need Rory for cash, I'm definitely on board with that. Another guy, GPP, Josh Teeter. He would be the highest ranked guy in the sub 7K range for me. T17 last year. He's got a lot of experience here, actually. 5 straight cuts, although he had 4 years off, but he's got a T7 back in 2013, T16 in 2017. Like I said, a T17 last year. His form is terrible, or I shouldn't say terrible. It's rocky. It's a roller coaster. He's either missing cuts like outside the top 100, or he's got a T2 in there. He's got a T11. He's someone for GPP. I might try and punt to try and get to Rory with another top tier player. Thoughts on that?
Yeah. I mean, if you're going
that says I'm
20
crazy.
to 25, not really. He's not for me. I won't be getting to him in the limited lineups that I have, but
for sure. And then this one, you're gonna laugh here. Bernard Langer. Thoughts on him as a min price guy? Probably more for cash, but super accurate guy. He would be another guy I would maybe consider for Superstars and Scrubs cash. All we need is from a guy that's minimum price on DraftKings, I think all we need is a made cut from him. If he was to finish T60 and you get Rory, let's just scroll up here. You go, say, Rory, Kutcher, English, and Leishman, or Finau, or Webb Simpson, even up to him. I think you can make that work as long as Langer makes the cut. But that's Superstars and Scrubby for cash if you want it to go that way. I normally like going balance for cash, but I just wanted to bring it up to see your reaction.
I mean, listen, anything can happen this week. I wouldn't be surprised if we see something just off the wall completely happen tomorrow through Sunday. So, like I said, I won't be getting there. The lowest guy I'll be going to is 6,600, I believe. Okay. And I'm not going to try to be in this range a ton because, like I said, I do like Brooks and I like starting lineups there in a balanced tight build. Maybe I jam in a lot of those high 8K or low 9K range guys with him, and then I end up down here, and that's kind of a different build even than a Stars and Scrubs. So I guess you would call it Stars and Scrubs, but you're not starting your lineup over 10K. So the two guys that I like in the 6K range the most is Bud Cauley at 6,800, and then as a flyer is Matt Wallace at 6,600. I just like Wallace's pedigree. I mean, if last year he had some great finishes in the PGA and a couple of the majors, I believe. So 6,600 is too cheap. I know he was playing pretty bad earlier this year. I think he played 4 events over here. Did come around a little bit toward the end, but 200 to 1 is a decent bet for a guy with the upside I think that he has. Obviously, his debut here. Definitely a GPP play too, but I think it's a guy I'll have in 1, maybe 2. Bud Cauley has a couple good finishes here back. It's been a while, 6-7 years ago, but I like the way he's played through the fall and early this year. So 6,800 I think is a nice price for him too.
For sure. And then we got a question on Joaquin Niemann. I'm just going to, I think he's probably projected, I shut off fan share now, but I believe is around 8%. I think he's a little bit lower just because, what's that?
10%.
Oh, okay. Which makes sense. He's got Horschel and Palmer kind of in that exact same price range. It's not much more for not English or Dahmen like we talked about. He's got some success here, 8th in 2018, 31st last year. The form wasn't great. Leaving the break, 5 straight finishes outside of top 45. He had a T5 before that. So GPP for me, he does have that top 5 upside. Even in some of these elite fields, he can show up. But I don't even think we need a top 5, a top 10, top 15 with his birdie making ability. I think makes sense. He's a good ball striker. I believe he is top 20, 17th in the field in ball striking. And my stats model on my sheet is looking at 95% 2019-20, and then 5% looking at last year's stats for some of those players just to get a little bit more long-term weighted in there. So yeah, he's top 20 in ball striking, which I really like to see. And then going down a little bit further, he is top 35 in proximity everywhere from 125 all the way up to 200 yards. So that approach game, ball striking, I think he has the upside with that. And like you said, anything can happen. So if you take a guy that can make some birdies and really nail his approach shots, gain strokes on the field and par fours and through the approach shot, I think you can have a guy definitely get up there on the leaderboard. And my prediction, I guess, for a winning score, I don't think it's supposed to be too windy, but I think the winning score, even if it is windy, is going to be higher than we have seen just because of the, not the size of the field, but like how elite it is, how many elite players are in this field, each of the top 5 in the world, and then I believe 7 of the top 10 are here. So I think we're probably around -15 to -18 winning score. What do you think on that?
Yeah, I think something similar to that, maybe a little lower just because, I mean, somebody's going to get hot. There's too many people in this field and too much talent. So
yeah,
I think it definitely lands in there if we don't see any wind like is forecasted. So,
and the best advice pretty much we can give is, because there's so many players we talked about, so many, like I've got core plays, he's got core plays, is just make it your own. Take the information we give you, narrow your field down to if you're building 20 lineups, I like to roll with about 15, 16 golfers, possibly the maximum. Really narrow that field down and just be confident about who you're putting in. Always double check your lineups. Make sure you're not running a guy 100% in all your lineups. Make sure that in all your, say you're running Dustin Johnson in your 10 Justin Johnson lineups, make sure you don't have overlap of other guys in all of them. Try and build a core. Like what I will do is take a core of say 2 or 3 players and I'll build 5 lineups. I'll change that core up. Even if I leave one golfer in for all 10 in that second core, I'll change up the core a little bit just so that I'm getting different exposures and different lineup combinations, but at least 5 to 10 lineups with a certain core, just so that if that core goes off, you got a better chance of winning.
Yep.
I don't think you're wrong with any pick this week. There's so much variance.
Yeah. Don't take anything we say if just for gospel. Just take the information we're trying to give you about each guy and take your own take off of it. Make your own plays. One last guy I'll throw in there we kind of glossed over that was playing really well before the break was Daniel Berger. I know you were on
Mm-hmm.
him a lot right before all this happened. He looked to be getting some form back that he had a few years back. I don't think he's going to be massively on, so I don't mind taking some shots on him.
Yep, for sure. Other than that, one and done pick. We're back on that this week. So as of now, I've got Matt Kuchar plugged in. The only possible pivot that I was thinking of making was either English or Nah, just because I was going to maybe leave Kuchar for a bigger event, maybe see what's going on, maybe take one of these. I don't think you should really put all your eggs in like a Rory basket or any of the big names this week. I don't think that's a direction I'm going to be going, just because of the variance. I'd rather go soft, and if I pick a guy in that mid range and he misses the cut, I'm not really going to be burned too much from using him for the year. So I'm going to probably end up going with Nah or English, but right now I've got Kutcher in there. What direction are you looking at?
Oh man, I mean, I was doing so bad in the one and done.
Take a shot this week.
I mean, yeah, I got to take a shot. So I'm probably looking at one of those guys down there, like even maybe a Dahmen or something. I'm not going to burn anybody else that I have left. I don't even remember who all I have left anyway. But I would not go up in this upper range this week, even though, I mean, it's a stacked field. Yeah, don't burn one of your guys with so many events coming up in the summer. Wait until we have some form to use one of the big guns. So find maybe one of the value guys you like, take a shot on them, because I think all those guys are even more in play to win this week. So.
Yeah, for sure. That's exactly right. With the variance and the huge break, and we don't really know who's been playing, who hasn't, who's been sitting around drinking beer, who's been out there at the driving range every single day, getting back, reading up on the course, that sort of thing. We don't really know that, so it adds a little more variance, which does bring those value guys into play 100%. And then in terms of betting, on the betting side of it, right now I've got Matt Kuchar in at 55 to 1. No, 50 to 1, and then the other one I got in is Mark Leishman right now at 45 to 1. Probably going to end up getting a couple more in there. Probably I might be looking at Patrick Reed. He kind of fits this course with his putting around the green game. Not 100%. I don't really like the 28 to 1 price. I think that's even gone down to 25 to 1 on Bet365 right now. Any other bets you're looking at? I'm kind of looking at that value range. Anything outside top 25?
Yeah, I'm only taking a couple shots this week. I don't only go heavy. And I'm really glad you brought this up, because I completely just didn't even mention one of my favorite plays of the week up in that 8K range. Gary Woodland, 8,800. He's a bet for me. I think he was 50 to 1 when I got him, which is kind of crazy. And that was where I was kind of going with the Scheffler. I think he's like 33 to 1.
Yeah.
And you're going to give me Gary Woodland for 55 or 50. I like the way he was playing before the break. I had him in a Masters future that didn't actually get refunded, so I still have him in a Masters future. So I'll take Woodland at 50 to 1 and on DK at 8,800, and then I threw a few bucks on Matt Wallace at 200 just on the off shot.
Take a long shot.
Yeah, not going heavy this week on that side of it.
We didn't really talk about Woodland. I'm glad you brought him up.
Yeah, I can't believe I just glossed over him.
A lot of people think of him as a bomber, but he's really good at these courses where you have to dial back to 3-woods and irons off the tee and stuff. He's got some really good finishes on some of these either hard courses or hard courses that are a little bit shorter and demand a little bit more accuracy than distance. So that's a great play, and I think at 50 to 1 that makes a lot of sense. He's shown a ton of upside already this year. I believe he's got 4 top 10s and 5 top 15s in a limited amount of events in, I think, 8 events this season. So I'm on board with you for Woodland for a pivot off of like Finau and Kuchar for GPP in DFS, as well as a bet at 50 to 1. Like that value range of the 40s and 50 to 1s, that's kind of what I'm looking at, probably laying about 3 bets down. I think those are the 3 I'm going to go with. So Awesome stuff. Thanks for putting me on him. Thanks for joining me this week. It's we did a double duty today, some NASCAR, some PGA. We'll be back on Sunday for another NASCAR live show, and back for a PGA show next Wednesday. So make sure to join us every Wednesday night. Probably going to be right around the same time, which was, I don't remember what time we started. I believe it was around 8 p.m. Eastern. So tune in. Thanks a lot, everyone, and we'll talk to you soon.
Yeah, good luck, everybody.